Alright guys, so today I wanted to talk about the first 5 or so steps that I take when I start a mix. So when I'm mixing a song, it depends on what you receive as to what your first steps are, obviously. I'm using for this example, it's something that we're currently tracking. So some of the stuff is, as you can see, scratch tracks. So we have scratch tracks here. We have final tracks here. This is a work in progress. It's from my friend Evan. I will link to her stuff in the description below. I featured her stuff a lot on this channel. So along the lines of adapting your approach based on what you receive, I have been the one recording this stuff. So I have done a few of these things already. You'll see as we talk about it. So just keep that in mind. I'm just using this as an example. But let's see. The first thing I will do is I will do a save as to denote that this is a version that I have touched. So what I like to do is just go File, Save As, and I'll often add like either just the date. I don't know what the date is, the 5th, it's August 5th, or I'll add Cato mix and then the date, stuff like that. But it's just to denote to yourself that this is the version that you touched, and then you'll also have the original version that you can open up if you want to see what it looked like before you mixed it and kind of, instill confidence in what you've done or, compare whether you like what you've done. So that's what I will do first. I'm going to not do that because we're not at this stage yet with this piece, but that's the first step that I tend to do. So then what I do is I always label my track. So I've already done that here because I've been doing it as we go, but a lot of times with these track names, we'll get like audio 1, audio 2, stuff like that. So I'll go through and solo and listen to everything and try to figure out what it is. And then I will rename the tracks so that they are labeled appropriately. And sometimes I'll put notes here too, depending on what's going on. It's whatever helps me. So because I've been tracking this, I've been putting notes on the takes. I'll often put notes on like the preamp settings or the microphone used, stuff like that. But that's a tracking thing. That's not mixing here. So anyway, I tend to rename my tracks to start with. And then I'll also, part of renaming the tracks is I'll reorder them too. So I like having my low stuff on the right here, all the way up to like vocals, the higher stuff on the left. I know that's the opposite of what a lot of people do, but that's how I tend to do it. And then I'll have the master fader on the left here. I don't know if I flipped it because I'm left-handed or what, but I'm kind of flipped from what a lot of people do. But that's what I will do. And then part of the whole labeling thing is I will also drop markers to label the different sections of the song. So you can see here I have like the chorus labeled, the verses, stuff like that. And to do that, I just hit enter on the numeric keypad. I'll name the marker based off of the number here so that I can quickly jump to it with my shortcut. It's period, then the number for the marker, and then period on the numeric keypad. And then I'll say, chorus or verse or whatever it is. So I can't type at all. So I will rename, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at typing. So I will rename these sections, and sometimes you don't know exactly what the artist would call it. You just kind of do your best, right? Then what I like to do, and this can be the most tedious part depending on what you're working on, but what I like to do is clean up the audio. So these vocals are actually a really good example. A lot of times you have big chunks of, silence, so to speak, in the audio file, especially if it was like an acoustic recording, right? You'll have big chunks of silence that aren't necessary, but you might hear the person rustling or moving around or unwanted breathing. Sometimes there's wanted breathing, right? But so basically what I'll do is I'll go through and trim that stuff out. I would listen and be very careful about it. She walks through the bar. And you just go through and you listen for that stuff that has noise that you don't want. Like right here, I can see something right here. There's a little blip. If I boost up my audio, I can see that there's some kind of blip here. It might be the headphones or something. I'm not really hearing it here. It might be pretty quiet, but I would probably get rid of that just because it might interfere with things a little bit. It just makes everything a little cleaner, a little easier to mix. It gets the gunk out of your mix before you even start. And that can have a huge impact. It doesn't feel like it does with each individual move, but it can have a huge impact as an aggregate, right? If you do a bunch of it, it's going to clean things up. So that's the next thing that I do is I will clean out unwanted audio. I'll trim out the ends of things, that kind of thing. So stuff like that. All right. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about today is just the idea of bringing up your faders to general mixing levels. So what I'll do is I'll switch to the mix window, so Command equals, and I'll bring up all these faders to a certain level. A lot of times it's like -10-ish or something like that. And I kind of just listen for the balance and balance everything ish for how I want it, right? So I might want to automate things later. I might want to bring one thing up during the chorus and one thing down, or I might want to, adjust their relative balance to each other as the song progresses. But this is just to get the general balance. And it might be hard, especially with things like vocals, right? If you haven't added a compressor yet to the vocals, it might be very hard to figure out exactly where you want to set that fader. But just keep in mind that this is like an ish thing. You're getting it to around where you want to have it. And you can always reserve the right to change it later. I do that all the time. You always reserve the right to automate it later. I would 100% recommend doing that because that can really generate interest and maintain balance in your mix. But that's the general idea, getting everything basically balanced where you want it to be in terms of levels. And I might also add to this line item, so to speak, is to just kind of set the panning where you think you might want it, right? So I have some defaults, right? I always have bass down the center. I always have certain things panned out to the extremes. I always start with certain things and then I'll change it later, right? I always adjust the different drum mics if there are different drum mics. Based on, how I want it to sound. You can do either like drummer's perspective or audience perspective, but there are certain things that you'll pan out and certain things you'll kind of keep towards the center-ish. Like for example, the snare, a lot of times I'll end up with the snare kind of like 11 to 15 to one side. So it's kind of towards the middle, but then I'll have things like the overheads hard panned left and right. Room mics, I'll often do those hard panned as well. Sometimes I'll bring them in a little bit if I want to do like, kind of a weirder thing with myself. But it's all up to you. It's all changeable later. So levels and panning, get those ish where you want them. And that can have a big effect on just your initial mixing position, right? Your initial feeling about your mix. And actually, to be honest, this whole video is very much inspired by Bobby Owsinski's workbook. It's what we've been reading in the Patreon book club lately. So I did want to mention that he has this one technique in the book. I'm going to get the book in a second here. But basically, he has this technique in the book where he has actual recommended levels. So he'll recommend, for example, soloing all the guitars and then setting those levels so that on the master fader, they hit a certain point. And I believe it's like 10 or 15, negative 10, negative 15-ish. But he has a whole chart of like good starting points for different chunks of instruments. So if you have not read that book already, I would highly recommend it. It has a lot of really good actionable items in it that can really help you with your mixes. And even if you've been mixing for a while, like I've been mixing for a while, I don't know how much of my feelings are imposter syndrome versus whatever, but I've been mixing for a while and I found a lot of it useful as well. Because some of it, I may or may not have been doing to some extent, but a lot of times you kind of do it intuitively, and to have it articulated in a more concrete manner can really help sometimes. I don't know. It's just good to ruminate on what we're doing as mixing engineers or mixers or whatever you call yourself, whatever you want to be. So let me show you the book. So here's the book. I oftentimes I'll start with like a Kindle version with our book club books, and the ones that I get a physical copy of, I'm like really into. So this is one of the ones that I've been really into. I kind of knew I would though, because I love Bobby Owsinski's whole attitude about audio and sharing what you know and education and all that stuff. So let me see. I think I actually marked it with my So he has this whole chart in here. I hope it's okay to show this. But he has this whole chart in here with like levels to set them at. And then he talks about the actual technique to use to arrive at that point. And that's a really great starting point for your mixes, especially if you haven't spent a ton of time figuring out in your head exactly where you want things. Once you've been doing it for a while, you kind of get a sense in your head and you can just kind of jump to it. And this kind of might make it kind of slower, to be honest. But it's a great technique for starting. So I'd recommend trying it even if you've been doing it for a while. So it's a great book. I've really been enjoying it. It's a good one. Anyway, I'm not going to dig into the book in front of you guys right now. That would be silly and very nerdy of me. That's the basic idea. I think I listed like 5 or so tips for starting a mix. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this is something that you might want to see in a series of sorts. Like, would you want to see the next few steps that I tend to take? I have realized, I always kind of would joke or actually talk about how I kind of jump all around with my mixing and how I'm kind of like ADD, and I really am in some ways, especially when I get into the later stages of a mix. It's always like whatever jumps out at me as needing attention, that's what I'll jump to. But when I'm starting, I've realized there very much is a concrete set of steps that I tend to take. And I mean, there's always exceptions to that, but I do tend to do specific things whenever I start. And I think I could continue with this if you guys are interested in knowing. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you're curious. This is just how I do things. Obviously, you don't have to do things this way. You guys know that. But I hope someone finds this helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I would appreciate all of that stuff. And I do have a Patreon. It helps keep my channel going. It helps support my channel. And we're hanging out on a Discord server. There's some additional content that they have access to. So if you feel so inclined, it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. And I come out with new videos every Wednesday. And thank you so much for hanging out. Okay. I wonder if you can hear the garbage truck outside, because I can hear it right now. And it's just arriving, and I just finished the video. And I'm kind of proud of myself for timing it that way. So, yeah, that's my story. I don't know. What else do you guys want to see in videos? I'm going to try to do some more interesting, like more in-depth ones. I know last month I had a lot of really quick Pro Tools tips because I was away at grad school, and that took a lot of my attention. So I just tried to triage things a little bit. But yeah, I might try to get some like longer projects going of some sort. So let me know what you think, what you want to see, what you're curious about. I have some ideas. But yeah. All right. I hope you're all doing well. Bye.